McSweeney following on his sword has bought him some time, but that time we may be able to number in days, if not weeks, and at the very most a couple of months. I mean, there's a number of huge roadblocks just down the pike.
So, Andrew, Neil, shall we start with talking about Keir Starmer? We're going to go on to talk about a number of other things, including Ghislaine Maxwell, who is testifying today. You can hear the latest on that across the day on Times Radio. Andrew, starting off with this, it is going to be a very difficult week for Keir Starmer. I think everybody has accepted that. The removal of a chief of staff, or the departure of a chief of staff, however you look at it, on a Sunday afternoon is never a good way to start the week. How can the Prime Minister get out from under this? Or is that going to be a sort of unsurvivable problem for him?
Oh, I think the die is cast. And as you know, I've thought that for some time now. I don't think there's anything he can do. McSweeney following on his sword has bought him some time, but that time we may be able to number in days, if not weeks, and at the very most a couple of months. I mean, there's a number of huge roadblocks just down the pike. We don't know yet what's going to come out of these documents that will soon be unveiled of communications between Mendelson, McSweeney and other parts of the government. But as I said before, it's almost certainly a veritable arsenal of smoking guns in there. We've got the South Manchester by-election coming up on February the 26th. Labour will now almost certainly lose that, either to Reform or to the Greens. That's another disaster for Keir Starmer. He's unlikely to survive. And in the unlikely event he does, there is the electoral wipeout that awaits him in England, Scotland and Wales on May the 7th. So it's just a matter of time. We don't know exactly how, we don't know exactly when, but I'm pretty sure it will happen.
It's interesting that you bring up the messages that the government has agreed to release, because threaded through a lot of the coverage in the papers today is this fear that the true extent of Peter Mandelson's control, his interventions, his conversations with those at the top of government might well have been the reason for Morgan McSweeney's resignation, and not actually what had happened already last week. That the sense that once people knew the full extent of it, it would be very, very difficult to survive. Do you think that is what has driven this resignation?
No, not on its own. I think the Mendelson contaminates everything that he touches, and he touched McSweeney. And of course, he touched Starmer, and therefore both are contaminated. I do think we have found out more in recent weeks of just how extensive Mendelson's influence, Mendelson's writ, ran in the whole Starmer project, helping to orchestrate cabinet reshuffles, to choose cabinet ministers, advising on a whole host of things. And I think we can be pretty sure that didn't stop when he became ambassador to the United States. After all, particularly on foreign policy and intelligence, as the US ambassador, you are privy to more security information than most cabinet ministers. So I'm pretty sure he was having his tuppence worth in. McSweeney was probably the conduit between to get that into government. And I think a lot more embarrassing stuff will come out from which the Prime Minister cannot survive.
Andrew, we can come on to talk about who might replace Keir Starmer, the mechanism for that, whether there ought to be an election. But one of the bigger questions we've been trying to grapple with on the programme this morning is this a Labour Party problem? Is this a Keir Starmer problem? Or is this a broader problem with government in this country, the way it's set up? Because we've just come off the back of a Conservative government that went through prime ministers like nobody's business, went through senior people in Downing Street like nobody's business, hit a number of different scandals, OK, in a different shape, but the same issue, the same incredibly quick treadmill of cycling through people in a way that we really haven't seen before. Is there a problem with government here, or is it a leadership issue?
It's both. We certainly have lacked leadership in recent years, but it's both a systemic and a philosophical problem at the heart of British government that goes way beyond any leader. The philosophy in Britain now is of big government. Government tries to do everything. There's nothing that happens in which people aren't crying for some kind of government intervention. And we're in a situation where a government that tries to do everything is a government that doesn't do anything well. And that was true of the previous Conservatives. Boris Johnson was a big government Conservative, and it's certainly true of Keir Starmer. So government is trying to do too much, and it's not equipped to do even the basics of government that it should be concentrating on. And then there's the mechanism of government itself. Our mechanisms of government are wholly unfit for the 21st century. Government has got too big, too unwieldy. They can't even sit cabinet ministers around the cabinet table anymore. Some of them have to sit off to the side. They've had to extend the cabinet table. There's not enough brain power now to fill the cabinet. The cabinet needs to be smaller. And in an age of prime ministerial government, and whether we like that or not, we are in an age of semi-presidential prime ministerial government. 10 Downing Street is wholly ill-equipped to deal with the challenges of modern government. I've argued with previous prime ministers, you really need an office of the prime minister stacked with the best and the brightest that you can bring in beyond party politics and beyond the rather B division people who are in parliament, and get top quality people to drive government from the heart of government. We do none of that. And we put so much power in one man, Mr. McSweeney, and now see his positions to be divided between two people we've never heard of. And the consequences are what you see, which is a form of British government not equipped to deal with the challenges of the 21st century at home or abroad.
And you throw into that how the different pressures on a government that never used to be the case. Andrew, you've been covering governments for years and years and years. I wonder how any government of the past would have handled a 24 hours, and it's not just 24-hour media, which is a sort of cliche of 20 years ago. It's the every single minute to minute scrutiny of absolutely everything. Personality, the need to be visible the whole time, the need to play the game the whole time. I don't know if any government would survive that, Andrew, let alone a government facing all the challenges that ours do.
No, I agree. I think the demands of 24/7 media and of social media, 24-hour news, 24-hour radio, of which we are a part, they all bring demands on the government that were never there in the days of Harold Macmillan or Harold Wilson, or even actually Tony Blair, because none of this had really got underway until he was well into his premiership. But I would say that government also brings this on itself, because government feels it has to have something to say about everything. And you never hear government say, actually, that's nothing to do with us.
But Andrew,
sort that out themselves.
I was just going to say that it strikes me that is what Keir Starmer came into government saying he was going to do. So
Lighter touch.
He said, lighter touch, tread lightly on your lives. He said, I've got these missions. I'm going to hone down, narrow my focus. I know where I'm going to put my energy and my time. All this other stuff I don't need to focus on. I mean, he didn't say that publicly, but he did say that privately. And there actually wasn't a huge amount in the manifesto that they were going to look at trying to do. They really did have quite a clear intention. So where did they go wrong?
They went wrong by succumbing to all the lobbies that are agitating for things to be done. I mean, we are now dominated by well-financed, well-motivated lobbies with nothing else to do but to push their particular case. And they make a song and dance about it. We give them airtime, we give them print time, we give them exposure. And we put government in a position where it feels it has to act. And no government feels strong enough to say to a powerful lobby, look, we get what you're saying. It's a very important issue, but it's not our priority and it's not on our agenda. We have something called national survival to deal with. And that is all we're going to concentrate until we have saved the nation, till we have sorted out our food policy, our fuel policy, our defence policy. It's called national survival. And you should really just sort some of these things out yourself. But no, we've got a policy for everything. It started long ago. I remember having a go at John Major in the 1992 election. His manifesto had a policy for hedgerows. You know, and you think, can you not leave hedgerows to local government? He said, oh, no, Andrew, hedgerows are very important where I come from. I say, all right then. And look, and we've now got a policy for social media, you know, for whether 16-year-old kids can access it or not, whereas we are not spending money on defence. Our energy policy is a shambles. It's destroying household budgets and destroying heavy industry. But oh no, government has to, at a time when government is populated by B and C division people who are not very good at the best of times, we expect them to do everything. We've brought this on ourselves, and we need a recalibration of the mechanism of government and what we expect from government. It was Thomas Jefferson who broadly said, government should do what only government can do and do it well. Leave the rest to the people.
And yet, maybe that's the beginning of a clarion call for what the Conservative Party might do, because Reform are a big state.
Indeed, they are. All populist right are big government right.
Trump is a big.
Look at Marine Le Pen in France. Look at Meloni in Italy. The populist right is a big government right. Look at Boris Johnson in Britain.
So it'd be the same. Your argument suggests that it would be the same under Reform.
Yes, I think it would be. I've noticed recently that Nigel Farage is trying to kind of move Reform away from that to try and instill a kind of smaller government ethos. You saw he did a sort of U-turn on the 2-child benefit cap and so on. But no, by and large, particularly if you're trying to get the votes of the red wall, who expect something from government, government to do something about their areas. Yep, I think you would find that Reform would try to do everything too. And of course, it has even less experience than Labour and Conservative of doing anything.
Yeah. And so so before we get to the possibility of a new government, there might be a new Prime Minister. Is Keir Starmer lucky? I mean, we've gone through it all morning that Angela Rayner still investigated by HMRC, Wes Streeting connected to Mendelson, Burnham in Manchester, Ed Miliband is Ed Miliband. There is not an obvious person to stage the putsch here. There's not an obvious person to go over the top. Is that this? And you wouldn't do that before the by-election, would you? Anyway, if you had any proper ambitions to lead successfully, you might not do it before the May elections. Is it really a question of timing and personnel that is keeping Keir Starmer in position?
Oh, I think he's helped by the lack of an obvious successor. Or those who are obvious successors bring their own baggage with them, whether it's Angela Rayner or Wes Streeting, and you've just mentioned that. I think the timing doesn't matter so much. After all, even if you became leader of the Labour Party, and Prime Minister, say in the aftermath of the South Manchester by-election, you're still cruising for a bruising on May the 7th. But you can legitimately say, look, it was too late for me to have done anything about it, and it would probably have been worse if you stuck with Starmer. I mean, I think the harsh reality is that although the Labour Party, and the country probably at large, has made up in its mind it wants to see the back of Keir Starmer, it's concluded that he's basically a dud, both when it comes to politics and to policy. No one is sure, no one's even arguing that any successor would be much of an improvement. Indeed, it could be much worse. Some of them could be worse. And we know the bond vigilantes. Don't forget the soft left of the Labour Party, the tax and spend core of the Labour Party is now in the driving seat. They've now forced a number of U-turns already on Starmer, from the 2-child cap benefit to no welfare reform, to the winter fuel allowance, to various other things that involve more taxation, more spending, more borrowing. That would be amplified by anybody who takes over, because the soft left will choose the next Prime Minister of this country. And look, what's happened to Rachel Reeves? She will go. Rachel Reeves, who already has the taint of yesterday's woman about her. When did you last hear anything about her, in fact, except for a rather embarrassing performance in Davos? She will go with any new leader too. The bond markets actually won't like that. They think she's been reasonably fiscally responsible. And you could well have if the political system itself is incapable of imposing discipline on itself, the bond markets will do it for them. And you could well have a financial crisis in which the cost of our debt goes through the roof and we're forced into proper austerity, not the fake austerity that people have been on and on about under Cameron and Osborne, which was very light indeed, but the real kind of austerity that followed after the IMF intervened in Britain in 1976.
But to do that, you would need to level with the country. You would need a contract with the country to say, look, hands up here, we're in a really difficult spot, which is not what happened in the last general election. Even though everybody knew that the financial situation was difficult, no one ever really asked the public for approval for the type of thing that you're talking about, Andrew.
No, that's true. But we're in a situation now where we have a government we didn't vote for. The government that people voted for in July of 2024 is very different from the government that we've got. This was not to be a tax and spend government. This was a government in which everything was costed. Remember that? And there would only be small increases on VAT, on school fees, and a couple of other things on non-doms, none of which amounted to more than 8 or 9 billion. So we already have a government that isn't what we voted for. A new leader will take that government further down the road. Even a Wes Streeting, who gets an easy time of it from the media because the media loves a Blairite, even Wes Streeting would be dragged into a soft left position to get elected in the first place. And when the bond markets force something on you, when the cost of your debt risks soaring through the roof, you haven't got time to consult the people. Labour didn't have time to do that in 76. It had to get on with it to stop the pound from plummeting and the cost of financing our debt to go through the roof. It concentrates the mind on that. You then have to pay for it come the next election. So I think that we're already in quite a difficult situation. And it's annoying because there are a number of things about our country which are actually rather good at the moment. There are a number of things in our industry, in our predominance in AI, in our universities, in our technology, in which, in our entrepreneurial spirit, in which you can begin to see a new Britain emerging from the old. But the political system is holding us back.
Yeah, stay there, Andrew. Lots of people are agreeing with you. Good morning to Peter. I'm sitting in a broken down car wash in Brighton, covered in soap, listening to Andrew.
I hope Peter's not covered in soap.
Life does not get any sweeter. I like to think that Peter covers himself in soap and then goes to a car wash, but I think that's probably not the case. It's probably the car.
It's not clear, Peter.
It's not clear. Ghislaine Maxwell is going to be testifying before Congress later today. Could that put pressure on some of the men who abuse women, but so far have not been prosecuted? How Britain and America have responded to this scandal is intriguing in its the disjunction between the two. Andrew, Ghislaine at this point wants to get out of jail. And the argument's always been, to get out of jail in America, you've got to please the Trump administration. The FBI is run by a friend of Trump. The American legal system is much more closely linked to politics than our own legal system. Are you expecting Ghislaine Maxwell to do anything that shifts the political agenda in America?
Well, I'm sure it's squeaky bum time for some of those powerful men who were associated with Epstein. That's true, but I fear this is going to be a bit of a damp squib, because my understanding is she's going to take the Fifth, which we've all seen in movies, that the Fifth Amendment, which gives American citizens the right not to incriminate themselves, and she's not going to answer any questions at all. It's one of the great mysteries of this whole Epstein business, which is that Ghislaine Maxwell did not do a plea bargain with the FBI and name the powerful men who were complicit with Jeffrey Epstein. That has always been silent. Now people say, oh, well, she's frightened of her life or so on. Well, they do have FBI programs that can counter that. They've got far more experience of it than we have in Britain. And it's a tragedy in a way, because the consequence of this has been that horrendous crimes that involve the exploitation of vulnerable young women and, in many cases, girls, underage girls. The only person that's really paid for that so far has been a woman called Ghislaine Maxwell. And I feel that as long as she keeps her mouth shut, that will be the case. So it'll be a bit of theatre today in Congress, but if she constantly takes the Fifth, it'll be a bit of an anticlimax to it.
Meanwhile, the front page of The Sun today has Andrew handing over material to Epstein within 5 minutes of receiving it. I mean, it's interesting whether he could be prosecuted for misconduct in a public office, whether a trade envoy counts as a public office.
It does.
In that way. So, but that looks like at least a prima facie grounds. If you're going to investigate Mendelson, you should investigate him. Well,
there seemed to be a race between Mendelson and the Prince family, known as Andrew, to get information to Epstein.
Yeah.
You know, we learned once that Mendelson managed it in 5 minutes. So Andrew managed it in 5 minutes, or Mr. Windsor, as I suppose we should call him now. And then we discovered that Mendelson managed it in 2 minutes. So when more papers come out, maybe Mr. Windsor managed it in 1 minute. I mean, there's no one at the top of the British establishment wasn't funneling confidential documents about the British state to this paedophile in New York. I mean, it's quite disgraceful. And of course, it plays to all those who think the worst of the British establishment in the first place, i.e. the Reform Party. I mean, this is just grist to the Reform Party mill. on it. And it's it's almost never, rarely anyway, working class folk who betray this country. It's always the posh folk.
That's an interesting point. Is Peter Mendelson posh? I don't know if he is or he isn't.
Yes, he is.
I don't really know his background.
His grandfather was a senior figure in the Labour Party, wasn't he? That was
he went to a pretty posh school, then Oxford College.
Yeah.
He was a Nepo baby.
Yeah, well, there's plenty of them about. Do you want to talk
more, sadly.
Yeah, do you want to talk about financial advice to students, Andrew? Because I think it's an interesting story. This is front of the Times today. Did you learn? You're a canny man. You're the very definition of a canny Scot. It strikes me.
This is true.
Did you ever get told how to be canny with money at school?
No, but I had a natural aptitude for saving.
But what about investing, Andrew? That's the thing that the Times is saying. We should be told how to invest and be a bit less risk averse.
Well, I mean, saving these days is a fool's game because interest rates are so low. So you do have to look for other savings mechanisms rather than just the bank account, which will pay you a derisory amount of interest. I mean, in theory, it's fine. I mean, you could have other priorities. It might be good if we were a little bit better at teaching the kids these days how to count properly. I mean, how to speak properly. It might be an advantage as well, of the basics of grammar before we tell them how to save. But the question I have is, who's going to do this? Do they really expect today's school teachers to teach people how to look after their money? I mean, these are state employees who are virtually unsackable, have no great risks in their employment, and will retire on a pretty decent pension. So where are the people who have the experience to teach people about finances? And I think they're few and far between. So in theory, yeah, but I think we have bigger problems with our education system than that.
Well, Andrew, it's been great speaking to you. Thanks
very much. You were
optimistic
for a second there, Andrew, but I'm glad that you stamped that down quickly.
It's my role in life.
Well,
we take away the punch bowl, as the head of the Federal Reserve once said.
Well, we love you for it. Andrew, thanks very much for giving us your time this morning.
Thank you.
That is Andrew Neil there.